Hi, this is Amy from Good Food Unearthed, and there's a reason I'm making this video today. And I know that for a lot of people, they probably will not appreciate it. But I would ask that you keep an open mind and an open heart and just look at the information that's presented and do your own investigations. Because it's never about what somebody says, what I say, taking it at face value, but learning to think for yourself. Do your own investigation. And above that, how do you want to live and treat other people in this world? How do you want to treat people who present opposing views to you? What does it mean to you to be human, to be compassionate, to exercise that practice so that becomes part of our reality, our community? What I'm going to share with you today is a presentation I've put together in response to what has happened with the interview that was shared by a pharma exec, the man who came out against the vaccines. This video went all over the place. And then there was an article that came out that was pointing out some issues with the interview. And unfortunately, the woman who wrote this article has been ferociously attacked. So, what I want to present to you is what is really going on here, and to ask you to really think about what you choose to do in relation to others and why you choose to do it. So, I want to share my screen. We'll have the short presentation up here now. Okay, so this is titled How to Recognize the Game and Not Subsume to Groupthink. And this is very important because if you don't recognize the essence of the game, when the window dressing changes, such as the actors involved, the situation where you would normally expect to see it, and then you're seeing it in a situation where you don't expect to see it. If you can take away the window dressing and you recognize the essence, you're not going to miss it. You're going to see that it's happening. And that'll help you not to subsume to groupthink. So this is the curious case of Rosemary Frei, Del Bigtree, RFK Jr., and Andrew Wakefield. And at the start of this, I want to say that this isn't going to be a smear campaign for anybody. We're just going to go through a bit of this situation and see, how could this have, why it maybe played out the way it did, how it could have been different, and what you yourself independently can do when something like this happens. So the first step is to remove the white noise. What is white noise? That's opinions, that's theories, it's conjecture, posturing, bluster, and ad hominem attacks. All of this is like a net of words that can be thrown over people so that they don't see what's really happening, what is really manifesting in their reality, what are the real facts or stated facts that they themselves can look into and investigate on their own. These nets of words are often thrown to rile up emotions. The whole intent is to cause blindness, but you don't have to be blinded by white noise. So your second step is to distill what is actually happening. With this case, with Del Bigtree and the video that he created on Rosemary Frei, if you watch this in full, you will recognize that it was an ad hominem attack. Yes, Del Bigtree presents useful information at times, but that does not mean that you have to stop paying attention and recognize that there is an ad hominem attack taking place. So listen carefully. and be objective. And remember that if you're convinced by an opinion or an argument, ask yourself, are you really thinking for yourself? Or are you adopting that convincing person's point of view? Groupthink is so easy to fall into if you're not paying attention. Have you simply taken up the opinions of others? And why? If you don't recognize the game, you always get played. There is a rule that you can go by. This is in Buddhism, and it goes like this: never displace your principal witness, and that's yourself. Say you are listening to a debate and you're listening to both sides. Well, it's not going to be about deciding which side is right and which side is wrong. It won't be about whose side do you agree with, whose side do you take on. It will be about careful examination and trying to remove the white noise that's in the debate, trying to see what's actually relevant, what's worth looking into, what is actually factual. And that is you doing that process of your own reasoning, your own thinking. And if it disagrees with the group, it doesn't matter because you came to that conclusion on your own. With this video that was released that I recently became aware of, so I apologize for the lateness of this recording, but it needs to be reviewed. Many adopted Del Bigtree's view, this video that he made on Rosemary's article, without further independent investigation. Many used his view as evidence to dispute Rosemary's article. How many people who watched this video actually read the article that she wrote? And how many investigated her statements, read her past articles, checked to see if her work had any validity? And then it's really important to ask how many of you can read an article without your voice mind, making it sound like something it isn't? How objective can you be? Can you catch yourself when you're triggered or you feel like something is offensive when maybe that wasn't the intent at all? And if you look at the context and look at the overall view, you'll see, was it or was it not? There are no heroes here. If you simply adopt a hero and you never question them, you will be fooled. Can you remove your personal biases and simply pay attention? Can you recognize when a person tells the truth and at other times falls short? It does happen. We all do it. So let's take apart this ad hominem attack. And the first part is gaining the trust of the audience. This is an entertainment factor. And if anything is being video recorded that has a lot of editing where people are dressed up and there's a studio, you have to recognize the amount of work and effort that goes into that. And the entertainment factor is very, very important. It is there to influence. Just be mindful of that. And statements that are said, like, I want to tread carefully here. I take a very sobering position where I'm sitting, I have my eyes closed, my hands are folded in front of me, and I want to appear very sober and serious. So you are now setting the tone for your audience to realize that, oh, this is a very serious thing. Like I'm on board. I'm on board with you. Seed in words to generate emotions so the audience takes the issue personally, such as pointing out in the article where Rosemary says credulous and make the audience feel insulted at that they could be credulous. How insulting. There's nothing that could back that up. All of these people do their own independent investigation all the time. And a lot of you probably do, but remember generalizations. And if you take offense at it, it's kind of silly because nobody knows. The person writing the article doesn't know you personally. There's no offense to be had. Another statement was, I don't know if she's an anti-vaxxer, which is quite interesting because you have to look at the context that that was said in. And it was said in a very insinuating way, where it was actually meant to be diminutive for her person, for her character. So if you're paying attention, you can catch the composition of the language used, and there is intent behind the wording. And just be aware of that so that you're not sucked in and taking on board things that you don't actually agree with. Then read excerpts of her article as if it were incredibly offensive, a personal attack. Get the audience to feel for you and side with you. And no one's going to read the article objectively and further investigate it. You can guarantee that those who are on your side are going to look over the article, if they do at all, with the same offensive tone in their head as you have laid out for them. And then you can out and out lie. Go through her statements and make claims you've made before when you were telling the truth in different episodes. So that gives you some reliability, yet you're not actually presenting the same way you did. It's just the window dressing. You're not giving the same amount of substantial material. Rosemary says, or sorry, Big Tree says, Rosemary shows no evidence to back her statement on the new variants not having been proven to be highly infectious. Okay, so my question is, did he not read her article that she published back in February on this very topic? Did anybody else who watched the show read that article? Did they look into the sources that she linked up to? What evidence does he present to contradict her statement? And this is where it's interesting. He presents a statement from the CDC. He does not present any scientific papers. He does not present anything of the same quality that Rosemary presented in her article on the new variants. And you have to ask, well, why? And what would be more of a source that you would find reliable? You can also then make the claim of cherry picking. And was Rosemary's statement cherry picking experts? Was it an intentional misrepresentation? But more importantly, we should be asking, is it about a battle of the experts? Or was her statement not about the experts? Were they not the subject of her statement and of her article? Remember when you learned English language composition, we often talk about how words can weave spells, how words are magic, how words can hypnotize or manipulate. If you don't understand language, if you don't pay attention to this, it will happen. So, what was the focus of Rosemary's article? Does she maintain that focus? Were the experts mentioned meant to stand as claims that her view was right? And what was her view? Is her view that we should think more critically about the Geert video and examine it for ourselves, look at opposing opinions, come to our own conclusions instead of jumping into fear mongering? Well, you'll have to read the article and come to see what you think her article was about. Remember that when sharing someone else's opinion, even if they're an expert, is just playing the game of he said, she said. What are the facts? The same is true of countering a question by sharing someone else's recorded opinion, like many people who just shared Del Bigtree's video on Rosemary Frei's article as if somehow that counters her article. Is that your thought or is that someone else's? If it is someone else's, Why are you adopting their thought over your own? If it is your own thought, why can you not articulate it yourself in your own words? The next part is to get your friends to back you up. Influential people to influence the masses. I think I recognize this game. RFK Jr., Andrew Wakefield. Surely they're both always right and truthful. Therefore, I do not have to investigate their statements, right? And then there's the big red flag. Dell openly states that he called RFK Jr. and told him that publishing Rosemary's article was not a good idea, and that RFK Jr. should, in Dell's opinion, remove the article from the Defender, their publication. Really? That sounds a bit like censorship. Why would that be the case? Why is it okay for Dell to call for censorship? And he openly states it. And if anybody agrees with him, you're agreeing with the concept of censorship. Is it okay in some circumstances then, but just not in others? This is very important. And listen to the double speak. RFK Jr. talks about how they made a commitment with the Defender to not censor. And he was speaking, it was a bit unclear, but it sounded in relation to Geert's interview and posting that before Rosemary's article was posted. And the idea was that let's make anyone feel welcome, even those who work with Big Pharma and promote vaccines. We want to make them feel like their views are welcomed without being attacked for their publication, for their story being heard. And it all sounds so wonderful, but something is nagging at me here when I'm listening to this. And if that's the case, then why is RFK Jr. and Del Bigtree at that moment participating in creating a public video to smear Rosemary for publishing her article in the Defender? Del, RFK Jr., and Andy. You should ask, are they infallible? Are they omniscient? Are they never wrong? Have you looked into any of them? Have you reviewed their histories and paid attention to their behaviors? Do you know them personally? Or are they the new celebrities for many people? I have nothing against any of these men, but I'm just asking that we think critically and we not give over our thinking to anybody else, that we not blindly take on faith what others have said. Even if there's somebody who often tells the truth, you still have to pay attention. You still have to think for yourself. You still have to be skeptical. You still have to review their information. And if they do something like an ad hominem attack, call them out on it. It's fine to do. We don't have to support something just because we like the person. So, what is really going on with this? You're having a smear campaign. You can ask why. It's a great question. And with that, what can you investigate for yourself independently? You may be able to see some connection or something else that's underneath this story. But what we're seeing is people collectively falling into groupthink. And in this case, with this ad hominem attack, this is an instance of it's pretty much global bullying and peer pressure, making an enemy out of someone who's really a friend, and pushing a false storyline. There are issues with what Geert has said in his interview. There are issues with the so called new variants. It is important to get a bit of scientific and medical literacy to get some kind of grounding there. But we'll go into that. So remove the white noise and you'll see what is happening immediately in your life. And this is what is so important. This will tell you what is manifesting. As I'm listening to the video that Del put together, am I getting riled up? Am I taking offense? Am I taking sides? Did I remain objective and further investigate because it mattered so much to me? There was something about it that felt important. There was something that I was fearful of. Did I bother to do an independent investigation where I looked at the facts and not opinions? Did I just click and watch and share? Why? What is my reasoning? What do I hope to gain by doing those things? Did I just become part of a swarm that bullied and made an enemy out of a friend? And what does that make you? Everything that you do, you can reflect back and look at how you are in your immediate reality right now. And what kind of community are you fostering? I'm quoting Aldous Huxley here because I like this quote, and it is very true. The end cannot justify the means for the very simple and obvious reason that the means employed determine the nature of the ends produced. We have to understand that there are many people who agree with the lockdowns and the draconian measures, and they think that it's going to bring about this wonderful future. But if we don't stop to look and see what's actually manifesting in reality, that is telling us what kind of future we're putting together. And the same is happening here. If we're just adopting someone's opinion, if we're okay with ad hominem attacks because we like the people who do it, because they're on our side, are we no better than those who advocate for censorship and do ad hominem attacks against us? That's not really the kind of community that I hope to be a part of. I would hope that the community that I'm a part of would be one that fosters mutual respect, that recognizes the inherent dignity in all of us, that keeps an open mind, practices that open minded skepticism, does independent investigation, and does not make enemies out of friends. So, what would integrity look like? If someone were to publish an article that disagrees with you, they mention your name, well, don't take it personally, even if it is offensive. And if it is offensive, ask yourself, does it deserve your attention? If it does deserve your attention, if there are disputable facts, then how could you approach this? Well, you could take it up and you can cleanly and succinctly point them out and present the data that contradicts and leave it up to your audience to make up their own mind. You don't have to try to be convincing. We often fall for people who are charismatic, who put on a good show, but this has been proven to be to our detriment. So it's nice if you can put on a good show. That's wonderful, but that's entertainment. If you want to dispute the facts, then you can be very matter of fact about it. And if you're in the audience, remember to always be skeptical and don't take someone else's presented facts at face value. Think for yourself. Remember, none of us are omniscient. We all come across certain bits of data here and there. And the reason that we interact and speak with each other is so that we can share. We're never going to know it all. But if we can keep that open mind and interact with each other in a positive way, it's going to be much more beneficial in the long term. And the third step here, after we've gone through the second step, which was very in-depth, and that was to distill what is really going on. So you remove the white noise first, distill what is really going on, and here's the third step. That is to examine the situation yourself. You can, if it matters to you, investigate access the raw data and come to your own conclusions. So I'm going to include a few slides here that I created in another presentation um, for the kids that I'm working with on how to validate information when it matters most. So first of all, you have to ask yourself, what is a fact? And this is a statement of what is, but this is raw data without theories, conjecture, conclusions, opinions, and beliefs. It uses terminology to convey a meaning. To examine a fact, one must first learn what the definition is that the person who says that fact holds for it, for that word, and then how many variances in that definition exist. What is the range of probability? For some facts, these can be narrower, but it's still open to change. So, for example, I have two facts here. One, I did not wash my hair. This is pretty indisputable. I did not commit that act. The second, the sky is blue. Now, this is a little bit more variable because I am perceiving it as a particular color, but that doesn't mean everybody else is seeing that particular color, or every other animal that has sight will see it as blue. So there's a variation. What is a theory? It's a complex mixture of data. It puts forth a possible explanation of why or how something is as it is perceived to be. And you can never forget that you yourself are an instrument of perception and you have filters. And every single person is the same. They are in instruments of perception with their own filters. So, for example, you can say the sky is blue because da 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 da, and your theory is what comes after the because. What is a belief? Well, this is a worldview, and it's a conclusion, a theory. Often it can derive more from theories that are combined together, a mixture of a bunch of theories, than a mixture of raw data. So you have to peel apart those theories to see what those were based on. And those are based on certain bits of data. And then you have to examine what those bits of data could have really been. And that'll get you deeper and deeper into the essence of what you're looking for. So, for example, you can say, I believe the ocean is blue because it reflects the color of the sky, but I have not investigated this. And what is reasoning? This is a process through which a belief, theory, or conclusion is developed. Everybody reasons. We all do. Even if we don't understand each other, we all go through a reasoning process. So, let me give you an example. Animals don't talk like humans do, and therefore they are not as intelligent as humans are. Okay, that's somebody's reasoning. Is that valid? Personally, that's not something that I agree with, but there are many people who think this way. So, what led to them developing that conclusion? Part of what led to them there is that they think that because animals don't talk like humans do, that somehow they're not as intelligent as humans are. And underlying that, you can infer from that that they believe that there's superiority and inferiority. They believe that there is greater and lesser. There's an underlying concept, an underlying worldview that is shaping their reality. And now you get to examine this yourself and question it. What facts are being used? What assumptions are being used? And what do you do when you assume? This is something that I often remember. You make an ass out of you and me. So, how can one validate the facts? Well, you can take those away from the theories, investigate them, define them, overview the opposing data if it exists, and they must stand up to any and all challenges. And it's important to remember that facts are multifaceted. They're just one part of a larger picture. So it's important not to get caught up in that fact as if it's the only thing out there, and then you don't see the rest of what it's part of. So If you come across a video like the Geert video or Vernon Coleman's video or Del Bigtree, I guess he really emphasized the seriousness and the danger of these new variants and so on. And you have to stop for a second and go through this process and ask yourself, is the fear necessary? So investigate to find out what the facts are versus the theories. Drop the theories, examine the facts, come to your own conclusion, and be open to changing your mind, because this way you won't exclude new facts simply because they don't validate your theory. And make the knowledge useful. Knowledge is not useful unless you can bring it into your reality right here, right now. Examine the raw data, leave the theories off to the side. Ask yourself, is this important? If so, what can I do about my life to manifest a better situation for myself? And remember to keep it simple. What am I doing every day? Do I spend time doing the things that help me be happy, healthy, and free? Or do I spend time doing things that make me anxious, sad, and frustrated? What can I change now without having to get more? And this goes back to what I said with the incidents with Del Bigtree, RFK Jr., Andy Wakefield, and Rosemary Frei. You're watching this video, let's take a timeline. Say you saw the Geert interview and it terrified you and you weren't quite sure about it. So you thought you'd turn to people who you've looked to for information before. And you hear what Del Bigtree says, you hear what Vernon Coleman says, and they've told things that you were like, oh, this is valid, this is true, it matches information I have already in my data bank. Okay, so if they're really scared about it, it must be really scary. There really must be something to this. And then somebody comes out with an opposing view and they present that, and you get Del Bigtree making this video that's a smear campaign for her. And remember then, what is happening when you're watching Del Bigtree's video on Rosemary? You're looking for his opinion. You're looking for RFK's opinion. You're looking for Andy Wakefield's opinion. The question you should ask is why? Now, if you're watching it to see if they present any contrary evidence, then you have to ask yourself, did they? Did they present any contrary evidence? And then did you follow it up? Did you investigate it? Is it important enough for you to do that? Or were you pushed with a sense of urgency to share, to like it, to give it to as many people as possible, to use Del Bigtree's counter to Rosemary's article as your counter to other people who come up to you and say, well, that Geert interview, I think, there's probably something not really to it. Well, let me show you Del's opinion of it. What are you really doing? And what are you doing in your immediate day-to-day life? How is it affecting you emotionally? How is it affecting your thought process? How is it affecting your relationships? So let's say it was something that mattered to you. You looked at the facts, you saw that, okay, there may be something valid here, and you've made all the changes that you can make. You're living happily, healthily, and freely. You can't see anything else to do. So now you have another choice. Do you choose to adopt stress and fear over what you cannot affect? Or do you choose to remain curious and wonder about life as it unfolds? Because remember, you still have only part of the story, and there's way more to this big picture than meets the eye. So now we're getting to free will. If you start questioning any and all data and let go of the theories, now you're thinking freely. Congratulations. So now what? Now you will be much more receptive to what is, with all the multivariable involved. Although it will be difficult to know all of them unless you're omniscient, You'll be able to pick up a lot of different options. You'll be more perceptive to the possibilities available before you because you're not blinded by fear, by boredom, by anger, by emotion, by belief. You can set all those aside and remember that this is your life right here and now. What actions are you taking? What thoughts are you fostering? What emotions are you fostering? Only you can choose how you experience this moment, how you can perceive it. So why not shift your thinking? And I say, in relation to what happened with Rosemary, why not choose to not become part of a swarm of bullying and peer pressure and making an enemy out of a friend? Why not choose to do something other than that, something better? Variability and uncertainty in science is so important to remember. What is really science? Hmm? This is the exploration of life as it appears to us through observation and experimentation. We are doing this every single day that we are alive. We are perceiving things through our existence, and through that, we develop theories. And from our theories, we experiment, and that's what our actions are, our projection into our reality. Science is dynamic because it's part of a universe that's dynamic. That means it's constantly changing. What are the timelines of change? What is the variability? What is the probability? Is it a narrow probability? Is it a greater probability? Science doesn't posit certainty. Albert Einstein knew this. Richard Feynman knew this. It encourages questions and challenges paradigms. There's a difference between scientism and science. Scientism is the new religion where scientific experts, remember the expert battle, are the priest class and cannot be questioned, but must be listened to. People blindly follow the mantra of trust the science, or they're trusting their new celebrities. They're trusting their quote unquote truth tellers without thinking for themselves. These things stop independent thought. These things are methods of mind control. In science, there are no authorities because we're all scientists and we can all be scientific in our lives. We can all be aware of how we are doing science as a process of living. And I think it's important to mention here as well, there's something you can do that can prevent you from falling into the traps of groupthink and adopting others' opinions. And that is that we're all born free, we're all born equal. If you don't put anybody above you and you don't put anybody below you, but you put them right on the same level and you just treat them equally, equal in dignity. You recognize everybody reasons, everybody has a conscience. It's all just different. Can you tune into where the differences are? So remember again that facts are not guaranteed, some are subjective, and all of them are multifaceted and dynamic. And exploring what the truth is very important. It is an essence, it's not bound by forms. If you're paying attention to the forms, that's the window dressing, and you'll be blinded. If you're holding on to that, you're missing the essence. Get beyond the forms to see what's really going on, and you're not going to be fooled. And it's mostly important to establish what life means to you and what matters most. I want to end with this quote here from Albert Einstein, because I think this is very important with all of the different aspects of fear that are coming up for everybody in their different communities. Everybody's falling prey to different parts of fear. And I want you to consider this. A human being is part of the whole. called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affectation for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So that is the end of my article here. And I want to share with you my screen to invite you, if you are interested in doing your own independent investigations. This is Rosemary's website, rosemaryfrei.ca. I invite you to read her article. I invite you to take it apart and to look at where she's linked up. I invite you to send her an email if you have any questions about what she talked about here. Maybe you have questions about, oh, I don't know if there's enough proof about what you stated here, and give her a chance to respond. I would say, have a look here at her article on the variants. So you can read this from February 3rd. There's a short video, and I want to remind people that when videos come out, consider videos as just summaries. They're just starting points. They're not the end all and be all. A video is your key to the first step of investigation. It may be something nice to share because it's more compact, but whoever you share it to, they should be encouraged to look into it further on their own and go to source documents. So this is a really great article. You've got a short 9-minute video, and then it's followed by a really nice article that's very in-depth. You can see all the links up here. You can check them out for yourself. You can read into it. This whole nice big article there, right? So you can start doing your own research. And I do want to point out that if you do want to investigate what could be the motives behind Geert, to consider his background, which is important to look at. Yes, it doesn't negate what he says, but take it into consideration. And then have a look for yourself, and you'll find something like what I found here with this article that was published in December 2017, Rethinking Vaccinology, Act Universally, Think Natural Killer Cells. And your lead author is Vanden Bosch. And you can read this article, you can get the PDF, and you can go to, basically, you'll see the same argument that he was making on the interview. And I encourage people when they look at these articles, there's a whole issue about what published articles are valid and which ones aren't, and which ones are industry funded and all that sort of thing. If you really want to do an exercise in dissecting what articles are about, dig into all the references, see what these are actually saying in each one of these references, if they even match up to what's being said in the published article. There's just so much you can do to take this apart. But you can see here at the end where he sums up that basically the whole thing he's talking about is how all the other vaccines are problematic, and we basically need vaccines that are adaptive and that are going to work now with our natural killer cells. And you're setting up a paradigm that we're going to have a future of bioterrorism, that bioterrorism paradigm. So it's just interesting to look into, and I'm sure if anybody decides to follow this up and to look for themselves, that they'll find other things that I haven't found. And I would encourage that kind of discussion, because we only learn by sharing the different information that we each came across. So if you did watch this whole video, I really thank you. I would hope that we could, when we do find disagreements, we could find better ways of having discussions about disagreements that don't include ad hominem attacks, that don't include groupthink, that don't include bullying and peer pressure, that don't include making enemies out of friends. And I would encourage everybody to start thinking for themselves and to question themselves when they've adopted a view that is not really their own, um, when they're acting out of emotion, because that is what's behind all of this that's going on. So if we do it on our side as well, if we do it on the side that's trying to point out the issues on the other side, then we're no better. We're just doing the same thing. We just have a different story. So thank you, everyone, and have a good day.